Thank you, musicians, and thank you, Miss. Where did my head go? Christina Carol Lewis. Ah. Oh, goodness. I was thinking about turn your light on, okay? All right. I realized I didn't have any humor in my message, so I went to the internet and I said, give me some light jokes. And it doesn't have any light jokes. I mean, L-I-G-H-T, quote unquote, jokes, right? You understand? Not funny jokes. But anyway. And so, but what they do is have a lot of light bulb jokes. And so I said, well, do they have any religious light bulb jokes? And here's what they came up with. How many Calvinists does it take to change a light bulb? None. God has predestined when the lights will be on. I knew you'd like that one. How many Pentecostals does it take to change a light bulb? 10. One to change the bulb, and the other 8 to pray away the spirit of darkness. How many? You like this one, though. How many TV evangelists does it take to change a light bulb? 1. But once he's changed the light bulb, he asks you to please send a donation so they can keep the lights on. And our Episcopal brothers and sisters. How many Episcopalians does it take to turn the light on? 10. One actually to change the bulb, and the 9 to say how much they like the old one. And Presbyterians, I love this one because I was a Presbyterian. How many does it take to keep a light bulb on? And it says, well, it should require about 5 committees to review the idea first. If each one is staffed with half a dozen members, that's 30. Okay? And there's some truth to that. Okay? And then, how many missionaries does it take to change a light bulb? 10. 5 to determine how many can be changed by the year 2020. And 4 to raise the necessary funds so they can turn the lights on. Okay. How many Quakers does it take to screw in a light bulb? 10 to sit around in a circle until one feels the inner light. And then how many Unity folks does it take to learn to screw a light bulb in? Obviously none, because I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's really none because we always think the light is coming in no matter what, okay? Anyway, that's enough of that. Now I just might get serious. Yes. Okay. One of the neat things about light is we can start at the beginning. The Aramaic word for light is nosra. And nosra means to fulfill, to enlighten, to bring understanding. And the first thing that God said, based on Scripture in Genesis, is after it was recognized there was a void, a chaos, was let there be light. And the way we look at that process in unity is that we see that whole process in 1 Genesis being the creative process within each of us. And if we're going to create anything, if we're going to step into anything, we need to understand that we must turn the light on. We must understand that there must be light because light is so important. The psalmist said, the word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. If you go back to Aramaic, it says the Spirit is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. You see, the first act in creation was God declaring that there be light. And sometimes, as we find ourselves in the human condition, we are, or we feel like we are, and that's the way I'd say it, because we're not aware that there's all kind of light, but we feel like we're surrounded by darkness. We might have lost a loved one, and that's a dark time. We may have a child who may have strayed that we're in separation from at a time. That is a sense of darkness. We might receive a troubling medical diagnosis. We might have employment challenges and be burdened by doubts or fears. These are all part of the human condition. And what I want to talk about is how do we turn the light on? How do we use light in order to move through life itself? Because it's obviously extremely important. So, how do we find light? Well, you just start right where you are. If you are in a dark moment today, then you can just turn the light on by going inward and declaring that I'm turning the light on to hear something that might help me move through this time of darkness. You start right where you are by saying that you are worthy, not unworthy. You start right where you are by saying there's plenty of light within me because I am created in the image of God. And God is light. So we step into it by accepting ourselves just the way we are. There's no reason to be ashamed of anything in the past that we've done. They're just mistakes. Instead, what we do is we learn from our mistakes, and when we learn from our mistakes, we're turning the light on in our lives. We're saying yes to spirit. We're saying yes to hope. And when we do that, we begin again to step into that place, which is exactly where you should be right now. And that is in a place of love and light. The second thing we have to do is look for a path to unfoldment and fulfillment. And boy, do I have a great one for you. This is advertisement. Lesson in Truth starts this coming Wednesday night. We're going to do 3 sessions. It's a foundational course. Lessons in Truth is all about the path that Unity, I believe, uses to move us into the light and to stay in the light, to experience God in a different way. What it starts off with is by a chapter called Finding Ourselves in Bondage. And most all of us, to some degree, are in bondage. Some have done more work than others. But we all have some form of a part of ourselves that's still in bondage. And so how do I release that? How do I move through that? And this whole book is about that process of how we recognize what we're in bondage to, how we put light on it, how by putting light on it, we then start to understand ourselves better. By putting light on it, we can even forgive ourselves. Is that what we need to do? We feel we need to do. By putting light on it, we can say, that's just a mistake I made, and I can move on. That's a misperception I had as a child, and I can move on. And by putting light on it, you see, I start to change the core values of who and what I am. Not all my core values are helpful to me. Not all your core values are helpful to you. So we have to examine our core values and say, what is it I need to hold, and what do I need to release? And that's a whole process. It takes faith. It takes prayer. It takes understanding that within you is the God presence. And as we study that, what you start to understand is there is this altar of love within you. The altar's inside, not out there somewhere. And that's where you find the answers, inside. Until you get to that point that you feel, you know, you experience the light in you. And it will happen. And then the third question that I would ask this morning is that we have to walk in the light. Now, how do we walk in the light? What is the experience of that? I think I've used this story before, but I'll use it one more time. There was a woman who went to Muir Woods in California, in the great redwoods, and she went there because she was really troubled. She was depressed. She was concerned about some things, and she just didn't know how to find her way out. And while she was at this retreat, nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was like, I'm not getting it. What's wrong with me? One night, she had to, or wanted to go down to where the redwoods come and you can sit and meditate. And it was dark and she was by herself, so she took her flashlight. And she started down the path. She wasn't certain exactly how long it would take her or where to go. She just knew this was a path to the meditation garden. And so she turned her flashlight on. And she took one step. And then she took the second step. And then it dawned on her. It dawned on her that she was trying to solve the issue all at one time. And that all she needed was enough light to take one step at a time. Just one step at a time. That's all required. It's not solve it all in one gulp. You know, when we go through the forgiveness process, it's not like I forgive and it's all done. Not with most of us. I see the person the next day and I still got some of those thoughts. And I have to go back and forgive and correct myself and move myself into the light. The head of the Church of Latter-day Saints was in Africa. And he and his wife were there, and he was to speak at this church. It was at night. And as he got up, get ready to speak, all the lights went out. So he found his way back to the chair. He said it was pitch dark. And he sat there. And they just waited for the lights to come back on. And about 5 minutes went by. And he said it felt like an eternity. The lights didn't come back on. But then what happened was some people started to sing. And he said it was like an angelic choir. All of them coming together singing This Little Light of Mine. And then they sang that. And then the lights still weren't on. And they sang another song that they knew by heart. And another song they knew by heart. And he said he sat there in the darkness knowing that he was in the light of spirit. And when the lights came back on, he looked at his wife and she looked at him and they had tears rolling down their cheeks because they had seen the light in the darkness. That's what you and I can do. We can see the light in the darkness if we search for it. Now, there's some benefits to light, and I want to share a few of those with you. That, number one, light always brings sight and understanding. Did you know that if a baby or an animal is left in darkness and sees no light whatsoever, they will be blinded. They will continue to be blinded, and some may retain their vision after they come out of the dark, some may not. If you put a prisoner and incarcerate them in a dark cell, like a dungeon, like they used to do, they will go blind eventually because there's no light. They lose their sight. You and I, if we stay away from discovering ourselves, if we step away from what we can become and who we are, and don't recognize that we're spiritual beings, we can be blinded by everything that's happening around us. We can become judgmental. We can think it's right or wrong. We become dualistic, and we see a sense of separation rather than the oneness that we truly are. And so as we step into the light, it brings benefit to us of sight and understanding. The second thing that light brings is life. Now, all of us studied, well, most of us did, biology in school. I had to study it 3 or 4 times. Same class. But anyway, and we learned that without the sun, there is no life. Right? That plants need sun. You and I need sun. That without it, we can't survive. We also know that sun is important because people who live in different parts of the country experience that sunlight in a different way. And as they do, they start to understand that sunlight is important to them. I moved from Akron, Ohio, after living there for 3 years, back to the East Coast in New Jersey. In Akron, Ohio, the sun shines about 1/3 of the time. 1/3 of the time. You know, I didn't even hardly notice it. But when I came back to New Jersey, it was like, wow, who turned the lights on? Because that is more like 2/3 of the time the light is shining. And when I lived in El Paso, they never turned the lights off, okay? The sun was shining all year round. It only got 7 inches of rain a year. And so we have to be in that place where life is giving, or sunlight is giving us life, and we have to have sunlight, if you would, to experience God. Now, I'm not saying God is the sun. Please don't go home and say Unity believes that God is the sun. Okay? I'm saying that like the sunlight, we need that light of God in us and through us. Okay? The third thing is light is cleansing. Light is cleansing. You know, in 1877 it was discovered that sunlight could kill bacteria, negative bacteria. And so what happened is that over time, we've learned to use light in order to heal ourselves, in order to understand ourselves, and in order to see life more in a healthy way. And as we do that, we then start to understand that, in essence, if the sunlight, again, using that analogy, heals that which is not healthy, inner light even does more. Because we know that light is healing. And because we know that light is healing, which is a great benefit, what happens is that, you see, we find ourselves in a way in which we are able to use light to heal ourselves. In those places, again, where there is very little light during the year. In Alaska, where it's dark half the year. Okay? There is a thing called, let me find it here. I want to get it right. Seasonal affective disorder. SAD. People experience that. People experience that in Washington State and Oregon. People experience that in the Northeast at times. And so what they have in Alaska and some places where they don't have a lot of light, they have sunrooms where people go and stand and feel the sun coming in, feel the light coming in order to handle that issue of depression. Because it can become serious if there's not enough light. If there's not enough light in our lives, spiritual light, if we're not understanding that we are the light and bringing that within ourselves and letting it flow in us as us, then what happens is we find ourselves depressed because we're misunderstanding who we are and what we are. We find ourselves with a loss of hope, a loss of faith, a loss of understanding. But when we step into the sunroom, when we let the light flow through us, we don't have to look for the light from the outside, it's from the inside. When we do that, we have all kinds of hope, all kinds of faith, all kinds of potential, all kinds of ways of seeing life as literally unlimited. And so we step into that. Then another thing is that we see light as security. If you hear something going on outside of your yard one evening, it's about 10 o'clock, it's dark. Do you go running out there just to see what it is without turning the lights on? No, because we wouldn't feel comfortable with that, you see. We get some security from light. But what we really get is when we allow what Jesus taught, that you are the light of the world. And I don't think in that particular instance what he was saying is learn that you are the light of the world. Become the light of the world. And as he talked about that, what happens is we understand that that spiritual light gives us the security, gives us a sense of more than security, actually gives us a sense of direction, gives us a sense of self-esteem, gives us a sense that we are more than enough. And that whatever we endure, God will take care of. And then light can be happiness. But you know, it's even more than happiness. Happiness is temporary many times. When I was in sales, we had a sales meeting. And next to us were the Hoover vacuum cleaner salespeople. And we were having this very sophisticated discussion on estate planning and taxes. And they were singing next door, let's go out and sell, let's go out and sell. And they kept singing, and we started laughing, then we started singing with them. We had no choice. And so they were all excited, and all of a sudden you heard this rush going out the door to go sell vacuum cleaners. I walked out of the meeting, and I was feeling good because we had a good meeting, and here's this guy going, wham, kicking his door, wham, on the tire. And he had a flat tire. You see, he walked out of the door happy, and then he became unhappy when he saw the situation. That's what happiness does. But there's something more than happiness. And what Jesus promised us is joy. There's joy. There's joy even when we have these difficult circumstances that we're dealing with. We've seen our own members who have embraced their physical challenges, who've embraced the cancer, embraced the heart, embraced some of the issues going on in their lives. And it's when they embrace it that they bring light into it. It's when we walk away from it, when we fear it, that we have less chance of healing. And so we embrace life, we embrace the challenges. And when we embrace it, we do it with joy. When there's a storm going on, we are the joy, which is the eye of the storm. Knowing and realizing that nothing around me can do any harm to me. No one and no thing can harm me because I'm standing in the light. I'm living in the light. I am the light. And as I understand that, I am able to move through that light in a loving way. Because you see, it brings me hope. It brings me faith. It brings me an understanding that everything is temporary and I will move through it. And I will learn from it. And I will grow from it. And all of a sudden, one day, I realize, as you realize, I am the light.